Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Badlands Book Club, where Ashe and I are covering the never-ending chapter of Strauss and Howe's The Fourth Turning, Chapter 8.
Part 3.
Episode. This is like a 65-page chapter, and these are pretty long pages, so we will finish it tonight. I think there's only 9 pages left.
Yeah. It's been a beast, but it's been the good one because it's the one that kind of brings us to now, or at least to the now at the end of the book, which was 1997.
Yeah, so an era that we are at least mildly familiar with compared to most.
Yeah, I graduated from high school in 1997.
I started high school in 1998. I think 98. I think graduated in 02, started in 98. Yeah. So, hey, there's my alarm going off.
Oh, it's time for book club.
It's time for book club. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start out with a couple of sponsors. And first up, there it is. Ash is rocking the hat already. We got Loaded Gun Coffee.
Badlanders, you are all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They've been longtime supporters of Badlands, and you may have met them in person at GART. But did you know they are a veteran-run, family-owned shop? They have a veteran-ran, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona. Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers a high-octane, patriotic punch of flavor. With a long family history of commitment to freedom, every bag is a testament of pride and honor. From the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to their roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world, Loaded Gun has mastered their unique brewing methods, resulting in the best-tasting coffee around. This coffee is smooth and delicious. Perfect way to start your mornings. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code Badlands to get 10% off your order. If you're in the Lake Havasu area, stop in their newly renovated store and say, "What's up?" It's badlandsmedia.tv/loaded. Promo code Badlands. Stay loaded. Loaded Gun Coffee.
All right. And Ash, I think you might be on your other microphone.
Oh, I checked that. That's correct. Hold for processing. Oh, it says it's right.
Okay, maybe it was just a little far away. It sounded kind of hollow. So
is it okay now?
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's okay now. All right, let's talk about our friends over at Scales. The Freedom Collection from Scales is a tribute to the untamed spirit of being on the water, where horizons stretch endlessly and the only boundaries are the ones that you choose. Out here, freedom isn't a concept, it's a feeling. The quiet before a cast, the rush of a drag singing, the rhythm of the tide. Designed for those who find purpose. Where the land ends, this collection of performance shirts, buttery soft tees, and ocean-worn hats lets you wear that feeling, wherever you may roam. Shop now at badlandsmedia.tv/scales and enter promo code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. And
how about now? Is it better now?
Yes, much better now.
Weird.
All right, so I feel like we do need to clarify the rush of a drag singing is a fishing term, not a drag performer.
It's not a story hour.
It's not a drag queen story hour. You know what I did this weekend for my first time in my 41 years of existence, Ash?
What?
I put my toes in the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, for the first time?
First time.
That's fun.
First time. Wife and I went to Santa Cruz. And there's a nice
saw the cliffs.
Yeah, there was the cliffs. We saw a nice little beach. We climbed down the stairs, and we put our feet in the water. And Christy got splashed because she's not a Floridian and doesn't know how the tide works apparently, or how waves work. And so she got like soaked. And I was smart enough to take my shoes off, and it was awesome. Cold.
I went to Santa Cruz. This is probably 1996, 5-6. There were some folks at my boarding school that were from Santa Cruz, and I went on spring break with them and almost got in a gang fight, but it was a beautiful place.
Oh, it was a beautiful place. I don't think we had any gang problems. Maybe a gang of otters. There were a lot of otters, man.
Oh, that's a good
sea
gang.
otters. I got some video. They just chill. They float in the water, and they lay on their back, and they crack the urchins that they go down and get from the kelp gardens, from the kelp gardens, and it's pretty badass. So, all right, you ready to get into it? I'll let you start because I got snacky chips.
Always how this goes.
I got chips.
Eat your chips on your own time, Brian. All right. Into the new millennium, generation exhausted. His great goal for the 21st century, says Wayne's World Mike Myers, is to have fun rather than to not have fun. His generation will, but only by continuing to wall off the money problems and elder criticisms. Economics will continue to tell the 13er story. By the early 21st century, young adult incomes will be lower, their poverty rate higher, and their safety nets skimpier than what was true for boomers in the early 1980s, confirming the 13er as the only U.S. generation, aside from the Gilded, ever to suffer a lifelong economic slide. Many will be kicked off welfare. Others will buffer their downward mobility by working multiple jobs, living in multiple income households, or moving in with their parents. An unraveling that began unfriendly to entry-level job seekers will close unfriendly to promotion seekers. From professional partnerships to store manager positions, 13ers will find their paths blocked by institutions that aren't expanding and by older generations who aren't leaving. God, that's true. This is already the first generation born in this century to be less certifiably professional than its predecessors, and that was the 20th century, 1900s. By the 00s, many 40-year-olds will remain personal temps, no benefit contractors, second-tier careerists, and lesser-paid replacements. Since the awakening, young adults have shown by far the greatest rise in income inequality, while elderly incomes have actually become more equal. The share of young workers with benefit cushions, health insurance, unemployment compensation, pension plans, collective bargaining has fallen, while public and private cushions for the elderly have grown substantially more generous. Into the 00s, the 13er reputation will be no better than now. Whatever 30 to 40-ish people will do will be criticized by elders, not just for failing to meet the prior standard, but also for being a bad influence on children. This generation will personify what America will dislike about the widening gap between haves and have-nots. Its failures will be perceived as deserved, its successes less so. High-flying youths will be condemned as economic predators and appropriate targets of luxury taxation, while low-lifers will be assailed as incorrigible and unworthy of public aid. By the end of the unraveling, the American social category with the greatest reputation for virtue will be the one to which relatively few young adults will belong, the middle class. The 13er high-risk mindset will come under attack as a national affliction. High-stakes entrepreneurs will be busy arbitraging deals and acquiring U.S. assets for foreign interests. Holy shit. They will be making markets more fluid, leveraging more risk, establishing more distance and anonymity in the links between debtors and their creditors, and flooding the world with American pop culture. In cyberspace, they will be hacking, spamming, code breaking, and tax evading. For all this, they will come under heavy criticism, prompting new urgent calls for government regulation. At the same time, what the Wall Street Journal calls high-tech nomads will be the fungible workers of the unraveling's globalized economy. They will barnstorm the marketplace, employing its every cranny, seeking every edge, exploiting every point of advantage. They will talk about jobs rather than careers, emphasizing what can totally get done by the end of the day rather than potentially done later in life. Where the silent believed in the building blocks of success and inhabited a corporate world of stable pay and benefits, 13ers will believe in the quick strike and inhabit an economy of erratic pay, no benefits, and little loyalty. Where young silent workers let others negotiate for them, 13ers will strike their own deals, stressing new term incentives like piecework or commissions. That's like gig economy. Piecework, they refer to as piecework right there as gig economy, which was a prediction at this point. The gig economy had not yet happened. Where the typical silent expected to stay with a first employer for decades, a typical 13er will expect a rapid turnover of employers and work situations. The 13er low sweat, task efficient work style will be extremely good for U.S. profitability, one enterprise at a time. Economists have long said this sort of worker is what an ever changing global economy needs, but once America acquires a whole generation of them, only managers won't be so pleased. Older managers won't be so pleased. The perceived problem won't be whether 13ers work enough, which they will, but rather their distance from corporate culture. Young workers will follow the contract. When it's time to work, they will focus, but when it's quitting time, they will disengage. Ersatz, social arrangements, often a platoon of friends, will provide them with the life support functions for which their parents once looked to employers. Many 13ers will skip the institutional economy entirely and go it alone or with friends, outpacing and underpricing older rivals, playing crafty high-tech games with and against elder-built systems. What Saren Sakurai calls counter-commerce will steal markets from big corporate rivals, undermine rule-encrusted state enterprises, mail, education, security, and mount gray market challenges to credentialed professions, law, insurance, finance. Whenever governments privatize or big companies restructure, 13ers will benefit. In the military, 13er officers will flaunt a Spartan-like warrior ethos. On campus, their iconic is that an L? Laconic? Yeah. Couldn't tell if that was an L or an I. Laconic libertarianism will clash with the voluble liberalism of aging tenured professors.
Amen to that.
Yeah. By the 00s, 40-ish novelists, filmmakers, and pop stars will be pushing every niche, every extravagance, every extreme sport, every technology, every shock, sex, violence, profanity, apathy, self-mutilation, to the maximum, prompting boomer calls for boycotts and censorship.
Yeah.
As young, it's a pretty accurate prediction. As young adult attendance sags at national parks, historic sites, museums, and classical concerts, a clear demarcation will exist between the 13er fun culture and the boomer classic alternative. Sports and celebrity entertainments will acquire a brass equality more akin to gladiatorial than civic ritual. Athletes and entertainers will raise sports and media to new heights of commercial glitz. Star salaries will skyrocket even higher, but journeymen will lose ground. Their individual exploits will be applauded, their team spirit condemned. Fan loyalties will weaken as parents urge children to look elsewhere for role models. Eventually, 13er youth culture will come to feel like Kurt Cobain before his suicide, bored and old. Near the end of the unraveling, 13ers will start tiring of all the motion and options. Feeling less Generation X than a generation exhausted, they will want to reverse their life direction. Their attitude toward risk will change. Those who are doing well will reveal a young fogey siege mentality that discourages further risk-taking. High-achieving married 13ers will push family life toward a pragmatic form of social conservatism. Restoring the single earner home will be a male priority. Restoring the reliability of marriage will be a feminist priority. Late-born 13ers will start marrying and having babies younger, partly to avoid the risks of serial sex and harassment at work, but also to get a head start on saving and homeowning. By the end of the unraveling, the median age at first marriage will be even lower than it is today. In time, what's that?
I don't think that happened. I think it's higher now, the median age for home buying.
Yeah. Well, I wonder when the unraveling began and when it ended, too. Like, have we seen it yet? Because some of them are shorter than 20, 25 years, and some of them were a little bit longer, you know?
Well, we also had COVID in the middle of all that, which destroyed home buying.
Yeah. Okay. In time, even 13ers without good jobs will take comfort in their toeholds of the American dream. On the whole, they will appreciate worth and precariousness of whatever good fortune they have achieved and will fear how far they could fall if they ever lost it. Many will scrupulously avoid risk in their personal lives, even if they still have no choice but to keep taking long shots in their work lives. They will become intensely frugal, loyal to kin, faithful to spouses, and protective of children. They will not take a close and supportive family for granted. Building one will be an achievement in which they will take great pride. Been there, done that will be their parental attitude towards sex, whose dangers they will be determined to shield from their children. As 13ers cordon off their self-contained lives, older critics will find fault with a home life that will strike some as too much family and not enough values. Modular-minded young parents will go out in the evening and enjoy Quentin Tarantino films, then come home and tuck toddlers snugly into bed, much to the amazed disapproval of older people. That, I think, happened. By the 00s, 13er will comfortably inhabit a world of unprecedented diversity. Wow. Few will share the high era that race in America is simply a problem of black versus white. Asian and Hispanic Americans will make 13er race issues a more multivariate equation. As those ethnicities catapult into the cultural mainstream, they will be greeted with demands for a clampdown on immigration. A small but significant share of young adults, including whites, will gravitate toward organizations touting racial or ethnic separatism. From poverty to crime to making families work again, 13ers will redefine old civil rights issues into problems independent of race. Many will come to associate the phrase civil rights with elder ministers, teachers, and bureaucrats whom they won't want meddling in their lives. Their goal will be to stop all the racial game playing, and they will be skeptical that the solution is simply to get everyone to understand each other. As more 13ers form families, they will finally start voting in respectable numbers. By 1998, they will comprise America's largest potential generational voting bloc, and by the end of the unraveling, the largest actual bloc. Once they discover the voting booth, their prior partisan detachment will work to their advantage. Come the 00s, 13ers will occupy the critical margins of politics, capable of deciding who wins and who loses. They will apply their pop and politics internet skills for the benefit of candidates who avoid hype, who do what it takes to get the job done, and who promise to not make their problems worse. The first prominent 13er politicians will detach positions from principles, simplify the complex, and strip issue debates to their fundamentals. To their mindset, no program will be untouchable, no promise inviolable, no budget incapable of balance. They will propose bold new remedies to crack down on unraveling era's most elusive targets, from trial lawyers to wealthy seniors to corporations at the public trough. Among their first political goals will be to eliminate no-fault divorce and racial quotas. Their no-nonsense pragmatism will be criticized by the silent as uninformed, by boomers as unprincipled. Few of their proposals will be enacted, not yet anyway. As the unraveling nears an end, the public image of a worn-out era will fuse with the image of a worn-out and unraveled generation. By the mid-00s, the 13er persona will be thrown into relief, not just by very different older generations, but now by very different younger generation. As always, 13ers will handle it with a shrug before going ahead and doing what they must, knowing that as a generation, they are not getting anything except older. As these 40-year-olds buy and collect pop culture junk from the 1970s, their child anchor decade, they will sense the irony of their situation. Whatever their elders may think of them, America's 13er generation will be around for the usual duration. They are our children, and we should love them, says Mario Cuomo. But even if we don't love them, we need them because they are our future.
All right. Millennials entering childhood. Friends of Barney.
Ugh.
Around Christmas time of 1983, adult America fell in love with a precious new doll, harvested from nature, so wrinkly and cuddly that everybody thought it cute. By the hundreds of thousands, Cabbage Patch Kids decorated the playpens of new millennial generation of babies. A year earlier, a Newsweek cover story had heralded these toddlers as the past due offspring of boomers who had spent the prior 2 decades celebrating childlessness. Now boomers were making a fuss over the life cycle choice to give birth. As bright yellow signs proclaimed baby on board in car windows across America, Hollywood quickly picked up the trend. In the early 1980s, movies about demon children, Firestarter, Children of the Corn, suddenly flopped at the box office, soon to be replaced by wanted baby stories like Raising Arizona, Three Men and a Baby, and Baby Boom. By the end of the 1980s, pop culture families still had punkish teenagers, but now the younger 6 to 8-year-olds were as virtuous as Bart Simpson's younger sister, and their parents were heeding fatal attraction warnings against awakening era family behavior. By the middle 1990s, cinematic 10 to 12-year-olds were literally angels, like the piano's winged Anna Paquin or the inner city kids in Angels of the Outfield, whose mere presence inspired older people to be and do better. Was there ever a bad child in the world, a spiteful, stubborn, domineering sapper of his parents' spirit? Asked a Time reviewer in 1993. There's rarely one in a Hollywood movie. Through the unraveling, these Cabbage Patch babies have grown into Power Ranger preteens, riding the crest of a protective wave of adult concern. As they entered preschool, adults experienced what Harvard's Arthur Miller termed a national hysteria about child abuse. And polls reported a 3-year tripling in the popularity of staying home with family. When the first millennials reached elementary school, children's issues topped the agenda in the 1988 and 92 presidential election races, and the United Way launched a huge new children's agenda. As they reached junior high school, proposals were made for a new V-chip that would enable parents to screen out violent programming. 3/4 of the nation's largest cities enacted youth curfews, and state legislatures pursued deadbeat dads and changed custody rules for the welfare of children, not as in the awakening era, for the convenience of parents. By the time the first millennials reached high school in the 1990s, had become what Mario Cuomo termed, quote, the decade of the child. From crime to welfare, from technology to gun control, healthcare to balanced budgets, nearly every policy issue had been recast in terms of what journalists called kinder politics. Both kinder politics doesn't refer to children, it refers to the age of the politicians, the mental age.
Certainly the mental tactics, yeah.
Both parties began crafting their messages around the need to save children, whether from deficits or spending cuts. By the 1996 campaign season, Bill Clinton's focus on protecting children grew so overt that silent critic Ellen Goodman quipped, "If this is a Thursday, it must be curfews. If it's a Friday, it must be school uniforms. V-chips on Monday, smoking on Tuesday." Millennials are emerging as something of a generational public property. Where child 13ers had once been the cast-offs of awakening era euphoria, millennials have become symbols of an unraveling era need to prevent the social hemorrhaging before it could damage another new generation. The only way to stop the cycle of dependency and crime, warned Ohio Governor George Voinovich, is to pick one generation of children, draw a line in the sand, and say to all, this is where it stops. When George Bush spoke of weed and seed, he was implicitly drawing a line between 13er and millennials. Much of the unraveling era's attack against welfare spending has reflected the judgment that many of the grown 13ers' children of awakening era family decay are unfit parents. Courts have become increasingly inclined to punish parents for child misbehavior or to take the kids away. Serious talk has arisen about, quote, breaking the poverty cycle by raising children in orphanages. This new adult focus has not yet reversed the awakening era damage to the child's world. The child poverty rate is still high. The crack babies of the 1980s are grown up with several emotional disabilities. Dysfunctional families are still a terrible problem, and 10-year-old victims or murderers still make the news. TV, sex, and violence have receded only slightly. In the awakening, all this prompted few complaints from adults, but now, in the unraveling, it infuriates them. As the beneficiaries of moral outrage, millennial children have come to personify America's unraveling era rediscovery of moral standards and spiritualism. The natural child represents absolute good, the abused child, the victim of absolute evil. Many boomer evangelicals report that their born-again moment arrived with the birth of their first millennial child. From evangelical Christians to Pentecostals to Muslims, many of today's new religious currents revolve around parishioners' protective urges towards small children. And in the secular culture, the little Jonahs provide the magic by which sleepless in Seattle adults find the right paths. Through the unraveling, a solid adult consensus has emerged that millennial children warrant more protection than 13ers received. Where the cutting-edge fertility issues of the awakening pertain to taking pills or undergoing surgery to avoid unwanted children, the unraveling is marked by advances in fertility medicine, preemie care, and the technologies to produce desperately wanted children. Where the circa 1970s natural childbirth fad focused on the richness of the experience for parents, the circa 1990s priority became longer hospital stays for the sake of the baby. An expanded child safety industry that focused on ICU car mirrors in the 1980s started emphasizing child athlete injury prevention in the 1990s. The unraveling began with new laws requiring infant restraints in automobiles, now new laws mandating bicycle helmets. As boomers have come to lead the institutions that dominate a child's life, they have combined two ascendant words, family values, to capture the gist of millennial nurture. What David Blankhorn calls the quote-unquote new familialism has begun to reverse the awakening's rise in divorce and abortion rates. The stay-at-home parent is reviving as a popular choice among families able to afford it. In sharp contrast to the awakening, a majority of working women now say they would, quote, consider giving up work indefinitely, end quote, if they, quote, no longer needed the money. Spurred by the new fatherhood movement, record numbers of American men are stay-at-home nurturers. When fathers divorce, they now often demand joint or sole custody. From the Million Man March to its Promise Keepers, white equivalent, men are seeking atonement for the past child neglect and are vowing to become better role models. 2 of every 3 parents say they would accept a pay cut in return for more family time. Thanks to such new workplace trends as job sharing, telecommuting, and career sequencing, parents are putting away the latch keys and reconstructing an adult presence after school. Unlike circa 1980 13ers, the high-tech child of the 1990s is less a home alone game freak than a pen pal on the internet with a parent peering over the shoulder. Adult nagging has returned to the child's world. Wincing at their own coming-of-age behavior, boomers have become what New York Times has dubbed a do-as-I-say, not-as-I-do generation of parents. In the highs, parents generally loosen the rules from one child to the next. Now the reverse is true, with parents tightening the rules from one child to the next. Good habits are newly demanded, poor attitude less tolerated. When a much-touted Pepsi ad showed a small child uttering its new "gotta have it" slogan, the parental reaction was, if that's how you ask for it, then you're not going to get it. The campaign failed. In the Little League World Series, a Texas 12-year-old boy was rebuked for celebrating his home run while his team was losing. In youth league football, kids get yellow flags for moonwalking in the end zone. How do you moonwalk with cleats on? Boomers on all sides of the culture wars agree that millennial children must be shielded better than 13ers were from media, sex, violence, and profanity. Having grown up in a high-era culture in which nearly everything on the TV dial was all right for children to watch, many boomers take cues from the author of Not With My Children You Don't and guard the hearth against the unraveling's far less kid-friendly culture. According to Raising Children in a Socially Toxic Environment, renting kids a random video or buying them an unfamiliar CD could be the cultural equivalent of dioxin. When William Bennett says, quote, there are, after all, some things that children simply should not see, he delivers a message that his own generation laughed off in the all in the family awakening years. Responding to Bennett, Tipper Gore, Michael Medved, and others, boomer scriptwriters are crafting plots with stronger moral lessons and less ambivalent messages about drugs, alcohol, and teenage sex. In TV sitcoms, parents now depicted as more in charge, children as more dutiful. Children's books and magazines are returning to simple stories and traditional themes, while new realism books are being removed from child shelves. In their new attitude towards children, boomers are playing out a psychodrama about how undisciplined they themselves have become. Quote, by intuition or design, writes Michael Sandel, Clinton has discovered a solution. Don't impose moral restrictions on adults, impose them on children. Pot calling the kettle black. The new values nurture is starting to produce a fledgling civic virtue. Since the awakening's end, the child savings rate has nearly tripled. More children are doing community deeds under adult supervision. Child sports teams have never been more popular. A dozen states have launched trial by peers program, letting children judge one another. In Kids Voting USA, children discuss issues, register, campaign, and vote in mock elections. It's created political monsters among Arizona kids, said the head of Phoenix program. We couldn't stop them. Newsweek has called the peer group a potential magic bullet for academic success, citing a 1996 study that found that the influence of friends boosted school achievement even more than the influence of parents. As boomers seek to standardize the culture and values of this child generation, they seek advantage in uniform clothing. In Washington, D.C., this trend began in the fall of 1988, when inner-city kindergartners in Burrville Elementary sported green and yellow coats, ties, blouses, and skirts. The contrast could not have been starker between those daffodil-colored younger kids and their older siblings with their X caps, logo shirts, baggy pants, and day-glow sneakers. Within 3 years, 31 D.C. schools encouraged uniforms. By 1995, the idea was spreading rapidly across the nation. In disbelief, said the Washington Post, that children who wore standard clothes, quote, would become more productive, disciplined, law-abiding citizens.
You skipped in districts that require.
No, I read that.
Oh, sorry.
I think I did.
I got
in districts that require uniforms, 4 in 5 parents support uniforms in belief, said the Washington Post, that children who wore standard clothes would become more productive, disciplined, law-abiding citizens.
Yeah, I thought you said in disbelief, said the Washington Post, which is why I thought you skipped a line.
Okay. I'm really lightheaded for some reason, so bear with me. I don't know why. I think I'm hungry. In 1996, much to the nation's applause, President Clinton added his own support for school uniforms and for child curfews, notions that would have enraged most of his peers in their youth. Nearly all school systems are trying to heed Rudolph Giuliani's demand that schools, quote, once again train citizens. The new 1990s educational buzzwords call for collaborative rather than independent, learning for regular rather than ability grouped kids who must be taught core values, do good works, and meet standards, with zero tolerance for misbehavior. The new 3 R's are rules, respect, and responsibility. Some inner city schools are returning to old style direct instruction, requiring children to recite their lessons in unison. Calls are mounting for more objective grades, separation of boys and girls, abstinence-only sex education, and school prayer, along with longer school days, year-round schooling, and stiffer truancy laws. Like Hillary Clinton, many boomers who once believed in liberating the child from the community are discovering that it takes a village and now supports a strong and protective child-community bond.
Pause there for a second.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting is that this is a shift in what the people were calling for, right? And that Rudolph Giuliani's demand that schools once again train citizens, that's something that could be picked up as a public mandate. And I think that the people in, for example, the education industry did take that forward and make an effort to train citizens, but they trained good global citizens with curriculums through the International Baccalaureate programs and other similar globalist endeavors to make everybody a good global citizen. It's very sinister, but it was probably sold on and adopted by people thinking, well, yeah, of course, we want to get back to civic virtue and have, good American citizens. And so you fund it and you support it, you advocate for it, you vote for it. And in reality, it's a bait and switch. We are creating good citizens, but not American ones. You're creating citizens with global values.
Yep, 100%. In public schools, surveys indicate that teachers are feeling much better about their own profession and are staying with it longer than at the start of the unraveling. Since the early 1980s, the share of teachers with more than 20 years' experience has nearly doubled. Parents have reversed the awakening era decline in PTA membership, where they are now raising money at a record clip. Many boomers are demanding that public funds be redirected to charter schools and vouchers to allow parent choice, a threat intended to compel underperforming public schools to improve. Through the unraveling, the number of U.S. children taught at home, mostly by boomers who believe the public schools have been corrupted, has risen from 15,000 to 500,000. Let's go. Parents are slowing down the developmental clock, letting millennials linger
I bet
longer.
it's way more now, by the way.
Oh, yeah, of course. Letting millennials linger longer in childhood, reversing what Richard Riley terms the hurry hustle of the awakening. From Sesame Street to Barney and his friends, the most popular TV programming for kids has gone from urban to pastoral, from kinetic to lyrical, from wry to sweet, and from discovering the self to sharing with others, from celebrating what makes kids different to celebrating what makes them the same. That's horrifying. Many grown-ups find Barney mystifying.
Marxist too. It's Marxist, and it's not surprising to me that they mentioned Hillary Clinton's "It Takes a Village" in a couple paragraphs ago, because that also was Marxist.
Yep. Many grown-ups find Barney mystifying, perhaps because it provides no adult subtext. One Washington Post TV writer called the show, quote, "so saccharine it can send adults into hypoglycemic shock." Anna Quindlen fears it utters its utter simplicity. Quote, "what they're learning is that life is black and white, which she sees as, quote, the primary colors of censure." Parents are stressing a values nurture, aided by a huge new bookshelf on the subject. Bennett's Book of Virtues, the unraveling best-selling children's book, has a medicinal cover, scant humor, and even 11 teachable virtues that do not include individuality or creativity. Millennials are not being raised to explore the inner world. Boomers figure they can handle that just fine, but rather to achieve and excel in the outer. And by world, literally mean the whole world.
Yeah, and it's not that boomers figured that they could handle that just fine. It's that boomers are like the number one trust the experts generation, particularly in their second and third turnings. And so boomers were told to focus on conformity over creativity and individuality, which again is Marxist.
Like any child generation, millennials are undergoing a mid-turning transition in the generational composition of their parents. The Cabbage Patch babies born in the 1980s are mostly the offspring of boomers. Their parents' overt pride in them rankles silent observers like Jonathan Yardley, who chide these kids as baby boom trophies. An implicit concession that the silent's own 13er kids weren't anyone's trophies. Born in the early 1990s, Barney's kids are equally divided between boomers and 13ers. The rest of America's unraveling era babies will mostly be born to 13ers. Polls show 13er married couples with children to be far more culturally conservative than their peers who, for now, remain childless. Younger 13er parents seem less interested in boomers and political discourse about the child's world, but they show signs of being even more protective within their families.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly true for me. More culturally conservative. I think my kids are also culturally, I mean, they are now, right? But they're kids. But they're culturally conservative because it's logically based worldview that's not built upon an emotional house of cards.
Correct.
Into the new, excuse me, into the new millennium, junior citizens. From their birth through their arrival in junior high, a national spotlight has followed those first Cabbage Patch millennials. Where the first half of the unraveling was marked by rising alarm over the children's problems, the remainder will be marked by rising satisfaction in their achievements. Meanwhile, the cutting edge of initial concern will move on to adolescence, and as the OOs progress to collegians and young workers. In the years ahead, the well-being of millennial generation will become a focal point for the renewal of America's civic culture. Organized public places, athletic stadia, cinemas, parks, malls will be newly segmented, isolating kid-friendly havens from coarser fare elsewhere. The internet will start teaching netiquette, which will help parents shield adolescents from chat rooms with misbehaving adults. Well, they failed on that because now the chat rooms with misbehaving adults, say in Roblox, are protected from accountability. Hollywood will make movies about wholesome teenagers. And you know what, Brian, is that's something that may have been intentional. You know, if you're planning on a long enough time scale, centralize the children's spaces and then allow them to be exploited. Hollywood will make movies about wholesome teenagers doing good things for their communities. Suggestive teen ads and magazines will draw adult condemnation as boomers aggressively scrutinize and chaperone teen culture. Millennials will provide a focal point for the renewal of the American family. Thanks to a growing presence of telecommuting parents and live-in silent grandparents, neighborhoods will retain more daytime adults whose supervision will grow more assertive. Boomers will follow Hillary Clinton's demand that adolescent behavior be monitored and constrained. The rates of divorce will decline in part because new state laws will make divorce harder for couples with children. Judges will not so freely grant separations in families with children and will punish deadbeat dads severely. I don't think that happened. This re-strengthened family will not be a replica of the 1950s. Children will not attach themselves so exclusively to mothers, many of whom will be working. Instead, they will attach themselves to a rotating array of substitute parents, often male, who represent the community. Like the offspring of well-run kibbutzism, millennials will grow up to be sociable and team-oriented adolescents, but will strike adults as somewhat bland, conformist, and dependent on others to reach judgments. Children will enter their teens looking and behaving better than any in decades. In place of the late awakening's tragic freshmen dressed in dark, dour colors, the late unraveling's friendlier frosh will dress in bright, happy colors. The new impetus toward upbeat styles and behavior will come from peer pressure. Words that by the OOs will carry a newly positive connotation. Millennials will police themselves and force a sharp reduction in adolescent miscreants. Teen coupling will become less starkly physical and more romantic and friendly, as no longer clueless teens will back away from early and unprotected sex. The adolescent abortion rate will fall. Fewer teens will get pregnant, or adoption or marriage will become more prevalent among those who do. Binge drinking and teen gambling will decline, just as today's 12-year-olds are confounding experts by turning against the crime and crack cocaine habits of their 13 or predecessors. With juvenile murders down 15% in 1995 alone, millennial teens will prove false the consensus prediction among today's criminologists that America is in for a big new wave of youth violence. To the contrary, youth crime will decrease. Some youth gangs will gradually redirect, so they had to import it. Some youth gangs will gradually redirect their energy from criminal mayhem towards collegial enforcement of an ad hoc public order. Those millennials who do step out of line will be dealt with swiftly. Unlike with aging 13er criminals, many of whom will be warehoused and forgotten, the purpose of punishing millennials will be to shame them, shape them up, and get them back in line. This generation will build a reputation for meeting and beating adult expectations. In 1990, America's third graders were issued 3 major challenges. Dr. Koop called on this class of 2000 to be more drug-free, smoke-free, and sexual disease-free high school graduates than their predecessors. President Bush summoned them to graduate first in the world in mathematics and science achievement. And the African American Project 2000 called on schoolboys to grow up providing consistent, positive, and literate Black male role models for children who follow. Millennial kids will do all that and more. Around the year 2000, America's newest weeklies will run cover stories singing the praise of American youth, commending them for their growing interest in current affairs, rising aptitude scores, good community deeds, and a more wholesome and standardized new teen culture. By the end of the unraveling, adult Americans will view 20-year-olds as smart and 40-year-olds as wasted, the inverse of the perception at the end of the awakening. Impediments against this generation's current and future well-being will not be tolerated. To the extent millennial kids appear to be losers in the free market, adults will demand redress. Youth poverty will fuel a new class of politics. Colleges will be pressured into holding the line on tuitions and student indebtedness, faculties into putting teaching ahead of research, employers into creating apprenticeships, older workers into making room for the young.
None of that happened.
Yeah, still waiting on all of it. Graying boomers will see in millennials a powerful tool for realizing their values and visions deep into the 21st century. My great hope, says Greater Expectations author William Damon, is that we can actually rebuild our communities in this country around our kids. Democrats will point to youth as reasons for expanding government, Republicans as reasons for cleaning up the culture. That definitely happened.
That did, yep.
Calls will rise for a spare no expense national program of compulsory youth service. That didn't happen. The dwindling defenders of public borrowing and of public spending that benefits the old over the young will hear themselves accused of fiscal abuse of a glorious new generation of junior citizens. Old federal budget arguments will feel all the more urgent. Where boomer children came to the conclusion that the adult world was culturally deficient but well run, millennial children will come to the opposite discovery, that adults understand values well enough but don't know how to apply them to public life. They will reach voting age acutely aware of their own potential power to meet this need. They will organize huge youth rallies and produce vaster voter turnouts. Turning Point USA comes to mind. A new breed of college activists will band together not to resist national leaders, but to prod them into taking bolder steps. Starting with the election of 2000, when the first millennials will vote, anything perceived to be a barrier to their future will provoke heated political argument.
That's interesting. The timeline, 2000, the millennials' first time to vote, and talking about them picking up netiquette and everything else like that, and seeing that they used the 2000 election to usher in technology, widespread in our elections. I thought that was really interesting. That's what was the other? There was one other thing in that paragraph that all right, never mind. I lost it.
Look for it while I read the last two paragraphs. Okay. Each day, adult optimism is building about this generation. Aerospace commercials plug millennial kids as the astronauts who will build and run the first big space stations. In a mid-1990s global competition, U.S. elementary school students placed second and U.S. girls first in reading skills. Wow, how far we've fallen. Prompting Hillary Clinton to praise these kids as the smartest in the world. In 1995, National Geographic launched a brand new Kids Hall of Fame for children age 14 and under that celebrates the good news, recognizing and rewarding some of the great things that kids have done. Praise Americans seldom offered 13ers back in the awakening. By the OOs, Americans will hear constant talk about the budding heroism of youth. A 1996 TV ad for Kohler faucets showed a bearded boomer father pulling his wet tot from a bathtub, anointing him with bath oil and proclaiming him king. In future TV ads, the father's beard will be grayer and the child will be stepping off a graduation podium, but the proclamations will be much the same. The Arizona Republic recently asked elementary school students how they expected to improve the world. We should start now, said an 11-year-old boy. Plant a tree every day. Get groups together. Can they make a difference? I know it. I just feel it, said one cheerful young girl. I believe in myself because my parents and my teachers do.
So the other point I want to make is the youth rallies they will hold. They will organize huge youth rallies and produce vast voter turnouts. Turning Point USA was a response to the left doing that first. The left with, Rock the Vote was the prominent one that I think of around that time, 2000, 2002. And, MTV.
Rock the Vote was hardcore in the 90s and in the 80s as well.
Well, it was big with MTV. Like MTV, I can remember specifically when I was a late teenager, 16, 17, 18 years old. Every spring break that they had, everything else was themed around Rock the Vote. And I swear I still remember
1990 was when it started.
Yeah, but I'm saying it got big with look up when it reached an agreement with MTV, because I think it was Rock the Vote. I don't remember what MTV's voting.
It was Rock. MTV was Rock the Vote, I thought too.
Okay.
Working with MTV.
But I remember going to like concerts and stuff, and they were giving
since the very beginning, 1990.
Okay. Well, maybe it's just because I was coming of age at that time.
Yeah, it was when you interacted with it.
Right, more aware of it. Like when in 1990, I was 7, so I wasn't watching MTV when I was 7.
And like Turning Point USA, if you think about like it started 2012,
right.
and that was Charlie. The story goes Charlie Kirk in like a basement with like one other guy, and they just decided to start building this thing. That in 2020 or 24, it's this massive entity. I think it's probably somewhat similar with MTV and Rock the Vote, although MTV launched off the MTV or Rock the Vote launched off the MTV platform, meaning they had a massive audience baked in already.
They had a big leg up in their start, whereas Republicans, as always, are about 10 to 12 years behind the liberals.
So do you think we should finish this chapter and then maybe chat about it a little bit and then end, or should we start?
Yeah, we should start 4.
Yeah, I don't think we should start the next one. We need to digest this one.
Yeah, 4.
The 9 pages left in this chapter have taken us an hour.
Yeah, 4 is not very long, but it's still a whole episode. Just looking real quick. And then we're not even in the third part of the book. There's still a whole other part.
No, we're gonna be doing this forever, everyone.
It seems
so there's acknowledgments.
We're not doing the acknowledgments.
We're not doing we already agreed to that weeks ago that we weren't doing that. The Eternal Return, chapter 12.
The last chapter is only like 2 pages.
Yeah, so we have this much of a book left.
A never-ending book.
Oh, we're getting close.
The never-ending book. I was actually talking about the Fourth Turning this weekend when I was in San Francisco, because I met this guy that was like a complete, and I'm not going to name names, but complete and total like American imperialist warmonger. Like America needs to spread its influence everywhere. Oh, yeah. Meaning, but at the same time, he's like completely anti like conservative anything. Like Republicans are the worst thing ever to exist, and I'm like, holy shit. Is he
Trump deranged?
Oh yeah.
That's a byproduct of Trump derangement, is that you can hold no consistent values. Yeah.
And you know what the worst part is? I mean, he was a cool guy, don't get me wrong, but you know what the worst part is?
What's the worst part?
Professor.
Wow.
Makes sense.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's one of the things that's happened with certainly I think the 13er / Gen X generation is the trust in higher education as a mechanism to send our children there and have them brainwashed for 4 years is much less appealing.
Yeah.
It's not as much of a virtuous, valuable thing as it was to our foreparents.
I will say this, being there, it's Christy's brother's wedding. So all his friends were out there, and these are people that we hang out with 2 or 3 times a year for holidays, that they all come back, or they go to her parents' house for parties and stuff like that. And so these are people I've hung out with over and over again for the last 16 years that we've been married. So, we all know each other fairly well. And I had a couple of them come up to me. One in particular came up to me and said, I always used to like hate you for, not hate me, but like hate your politics and everything. We all got along. But he's like, I just moved to Chicago recently, and I'm full on understand what you were talking about, and I can't stand that. He's like, I'm full blown Mac now.
Yeah, I mean, it does. There's different awakenings for different people, right? Yeah. Like there's going to be something that lands on their doorstep. If you're dealing with a honest broker, intellectually honest person, no matter how much brainwashing, there will be something that lands on their doorstep that wakes them up and changes their mind, I think.
To your point on liberals not being able to stand on any particular value per se, I'll let you ask Christy about that in private, and we had a conversation about that. All right, here we go. Toward the Fourth Turning. Years in advance, plans are afoot for an epic revelry to celebrate the dawning of the year 2000.
Y2K, let's go.
But they probably don't even know about Y2K, because in 97, I don't think it was really talked about much. Like it wasn't.
No, hadn't happened yet.
The computers are going to shut down in 3 years because they're going to think that it's 1900 and they shouldn't exist. How retarded was that?
Yeah.
That was so stupid. Some revelers will hear the scrolls of Nostradamus recited in the shadows of the pyramids of Giza. Others will board a chartered Concorde just after midnight and zoom back through time from the third millennium to the second.
Oh, rest in peace to the Concorde.
Right? What a cool ass plane that was.
Yeah.
Well, once the gaudy doings are over and the bags unpacked, Americans will reach a distressing realization. The first days of the new millennium will look and feel like the last days of the old one. They were right on that. We all thought the world was going to end and nothing happened. A year later, the trumpets will blare Zarathustra. Is that how you say that? Zarathustra?
Sure. I have no
To
idea.
mark the dawn of 2001, the true start of history's new millennial epoch. Then too, the ensuing year will produce the same old news about culture wars, social chaos, and political gridlock. Not much will change. The mood of the early OOs will be much like today's, except a lot more jittery. These will be years of the reality check of worries about a looming national payback in Americans of all ages begin focusing on how poorly they and their government had prepared for the future. People will no longer deny the unraveling's individual empowerment that has led to an antisocial behavior and a dangerous degree of institutional decay. The harms, especially to youth, will now be perceived to have accumulated to such a grievous extent that truly fundamental change will be required to get the nation back on course.
MAGA.
Yeah, right. Today's talk about America's inability to mobilize except for emergencies, what some call the Pearl Harbor syndrome, will have become a tired cliche. Wow. Today's talk about America's inability to mobilize except for emergencies, what some call the Pearl Harbor syndrome, will have become a tired cliche. I feel like we're already on that repeat now.
Yeah, I so mobilize except for emergencies. So what does that mean? I think it means, civic engagement, building institutions, doing the things that the greatest generation and the silent generation are so lauded for in their time to be in the second and third turnings. I keep getting stuck on how much, because this turning that we're talking about, which arguably has concluded its fourth turn at this point, maybe not, right? But this turning really began in the post World War II economy, maybe a little bit during the end of World War II, but the post World War II. There's a lot of other stuff going on then too, like a complete reshaping of the American way of life, of our economy, of the corporate landscape, of global institutions, and like good global citizens, like we talked about. So much of it has been centrally manipulated from forces who probably know and understand this as well as Lucifer understands the Bible, right? And they're able to hack it and manipulate it. And I do think, like, going off of kind of a Prussiagate angle, it's like blaming voters for election fraud, right? We don't know who votes for what and what the outcomes are, because the process and the situation is so convoluted and manipulated, and fraud vitiates everything, and a little bit of leaven and all of that. And our systems are rife with fraud. So looking at a framework like this, which is what I think this is, right? It's a framework for understanding history and using it to predict the future. It becomes inorganic when it's being controlled and manipulated and hacked by, say, the World Economic Forum, UN, Bilderberg, Club of Rome, 300, whatever, right? And I do think that's happening. I think we're seeing, I think that's who the invisible enemy was during COVID. And I think that's who we're actually fighting in all of this. So I think that if the last saculum was centrally controlled and managed with a focus on human behavior and getting these generational archetypes to move society globally in the way that the central controllers wanted it to. And they got caught. We caught them all, right? They got caught, and we're in the restoration, accountability phase, justice phase of that now. Then it makes me really excited about what a potential golden age might look like, because what it means as the, kind of premise to that is that Americans haven't haven't been unleashed in 100 years. And that's very exciting because Americans are fucking awesome.
Well, that's one of the themes I've been talking about throughout the book. I brought this up so many times that in today's day and age, it's so much more centralized, their ability to manipulate people, peer pressure, make people succumb to the idea that if they don't do this, they're not like them. Everybody wants to be keeping up with the Joneses and, similar to each other. They want to have that commonality. And when you're able to centralize that, you're able to do that on not just a national scale, but a global scale. I think that perhaps, that cat's out of the bag. It's not going back in it. And I think that perhaps there's an idiom for Christy, by the way, cat out of the bag.
We did that one already. It's actually included in our new intro.
Oh, I didn't know that one. I didn't.
Let the cat out of the bag. It actually ties back to people. I think, and ask Christy to clarify this 100%. I think like people were buying pigs. Like you'd buy like a suckling pig for your farm or whatever, and they would come in a bag, and you would open it up, and it would be a cat, and you had been ripped off by a traveling pig salesman or something like that. It's real, and it's like a day and a half journey to get home before you would. I don't know why you would purchase an animal without inspecting it, but I don't know. But yeah, we did that one already.
Well, I don't want to give Chrissy the benefit there, so I'm going to say Pandora's box has already been opened.
Yeah, one other thing about this, and you just brought it up, is that in the Gen X 13er generation, in our pop culture and music and movies and shows, peer pressure was undoubtedly a bad thing, right? You did not want to conform to the group. If all your friends were jumping off of a cliff, would you jump off a cliff too? Right? Like that was, I think about the movie PCU. I don't know if you ever saw the movie PCU, is Politically Correct University. You can't find it now because it's so damn offensive, but it was a great movie, and it really kind of, embodies the Gen X relationship with peer pressure, social shaming, and the micro or the macro. What we just watched in, reading about millennials going through the same season is that it was reframed, and social shaming is a public good. Now, I think making shame great again is a great idea, but not when it's centrally controlled to a set of values that are fundamentally un-American and driving conformity and driving, compliance and ultimately complacency, and an outsourcing of your critical thinking to where the experts telling you what to do is the ultimate public good. And we all just need to listen to the experts. That's what happens when you reframe peer pressure as from being bad into being something good.
Yeah, and that's the point I was getting at, is Pandora's box has been opened. That's not going away. So the centralization is not going away. And so at this point, if we're going to usher in a golden age, a golden era, then I think it's a matter of turning away the globalists that want, kind of the usher in the new world order, and being able to bring in a sovereignty amongst each, going as far as regions in the United States, but each country at the very least, to where they have cultural sovereignty, within themselves, but at the same time don't lose their global connections. And I think that's what President Trump is trying to do right now. I'm very hesitant about the individuals he's, opting to use to usher that in, but I don't know. That's where I see this going. That's my direction. So. All right, reading on. It says more people will start rooting for something big to happen, something bad enough to shock the society.
Wait, where are you? I thought we were on toward the fourth turning.
I am. I'm what some people call the Pearl Harbor syndrome will have become a tired cliche. I'm 4 lines up from the bottom.
Oh, wait. Oh, shit. Sorry. I thought we were higher up. My bad.
No. More people will start rooting for something big to happen, something bad enough to shock the society out of its civic ennui. The political party in power will stress the ample good news and insist that things have never been better, but the party out of power and any niche group that senses it is losing the culture wars will warn against and show signs of welcoming a catastrophe on the horizon. That's an awkward sentence. The late unraveling mood will feel much the opposite of the closing new frontier years of the American high. Back then, institutions were at their point of maximum strength. Whether curing poverty or landing men on the moon, the nation's grandest conceptions felt entirely achievable. Yet circa 1960 Americans, in the shadow of their establishment, were starting to chafe at the staleness of their culture.
By the way, that word, I had to look it up, was ennui.
Ennui, E-N-N-U-I, ennui.
Yeah.
Okay. What does it mean?
So I was just looking to see if I can find the definition. Hang on. Definition.
Strauss and Howe like to sound smarter than
Feeling of listlessness and dissatisfaction arising from a lack of occupation or excitement. So the sentence was, more people will start rooting for something big to happen, something bad enough to shock the society out of its civic ennui, its civic listlessness, dissatisfaction, apathy. I mean, that's kind of true, right? There's a lot of people that are rooting for bad things to happen. Laura Limmer seems to be screaming for a new 9/11 every damn day.
She is
At least that's how I see it based on her content.
By the middle 00s, institutions will reach a point of maximum weakness, individualism of maximum strength, and even the simplest public task will feel beyond the ability of government. As niche walls rise even higher, people will complain endlessly about how bad all the other niches are. Wide chasms will separate rich from poor, whites from blacks, immigrants from native-borns, seculars from born-agains, technophiles from technophobes.
Like intersectionality.
Yeah, I can feel that.
They added some non-immutable aspects to it, but that's at least the first three of those are intersectionality.
America will feel more tribal. Indeed, many will be asking whether 50 states and so many dozens of ethnic cultures make sense anymore as a nation.
Ask that question on the air myself.
Spot on all the time.
We need to balkanize.
And if they do, whether that nation has a future. In the early 00s, institutions will seem hyper-complex and fastidiously interconnected at the periphery, but empty at the core. Individuals will feel exquisitely exempt from the day-to-day random vagaries of nature and civil authority, yet rawly vulnerable to the greatest disasters fate can mete out. With soft finger strokes from their home-based tech centers, millions of people will be commanding pizza deliveries, masterminding financial transactions, and securing hard disk secrets. I know, and we didn't even have iPhones yet when this.
That's what's so crazy is that the technology landscape was so much more primitive when this was written than it is now. The ability to do things like DoorDash and Instacart and Uber weren't, I'm sure they were conceived because, DARPA had squeezed every bit of defense value out of them as possible before they were given to consumers. But still, man, on point.
But they will be accurately aware that the unraveling era's empowered individual survives on the flimsiest of foundations, that with just one tsunami, the whole archipelago of little human islands could sink into a sea of social chaos.
Archipelago is a group of islands.
Yeah, I know.
Archipelago.
Archipelago. I'm putting the syllable in a different space. Okay, whatever. Or the accent mark.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Emphasis on the wrong syllable. The better the economy performs, the more people will feel they have to lose, and the worst will be the national case of nerves. Meanwhile, the unraveling era culture carnival will race along ever faster, ever more splintery and frenetic. With more jewelry and tattoos and trash talk and the loud lollapaloozas, the public will plunge even ever further into what Tom Peters calls the pursuit of wow, until eventually the remaining enthusiasm will be summed up in two words. Yeah, right. People young and old will puzzle over what it felt like for their parents and grandparents in a distantly remembered era to have lived in a society that felt like one national community. They will yearn to recreate this, to put America back together again, but no one will know how.
Except Donald J. Trump.
As the fourth turn, do you think he ever read this?
Probably.
As the fourth turning approaches, each generation will view events from its own life cycle perspective. The silent, approaching 80 will be deeply anguished. 60-ish boomers will brood over their institutional powerlessness to impose a cleansing agenda. Broken into shards, 13ers will privately find ways of making small things work in disordered environments. The first millennials will come of age amid the adulation of elders to whom they will embody the hopes for civic renewal. The problems of childhood now fixed, a new batch of babies will start arriving to hardly a ripple of notice. Each generation will show clear signs of changing. As each approaches the brink of its next phase of life, it will not want to behave like its next elders did. Boomers will be of no mind to carry on an other-directed, self-doubting sentimentalism. The 13ers will have no desire to be argumentative and judgmental. Millennials will earnestly want to shed the cynical alienation of youth. Parents will be disinclined to make any further changes in what will now be deemed an acceptably protective style of nurture. Toward the end of unraveling, each archetype's phase of life role reaches a new point of strain. The elder artists, now appearing less flexible than indecisive, begin impeding the prophet's values agenda. The midlife prophets, now filled with the righteousness of conviction, grow impatient to lead society towards ever deeper spiritual conversion. The young adult nomads, now tiring of an unrewarding self-sufficiency, yearn to settle down and shore up social barriers. The child heroes, protected by adults who are fearful of their future, begin sensing a dire secular challenge at the heart of the prophet's visions. By the early 00s, when the four generational archetypes fully occupy these life cycle phases, they will be poised to assert new social roles. Their unraveling era behavior cannot and will not continue. The public mood will feel stale, used up, primed for something else. Americans will have had quite enough glitz and roar of celebrity circuses, of living as though there were no tomorrow. Forebodings will deepen, and spiritual currents will darken. Whether we realize it or not, we will be ready for a dramatic event to shock the nation out of its complacency and decay. The fourth turning will be at hand. I'm calling it now. It's the 2020 election.
No, this is the fourth turning will be at hand. They're in the unraveling. The fourth turning will be at hand imminently after this book. That's 9/11, in my opinion. The event is 9/11, but
well,
it was
20 years. Are we in the next archetype?
Yeah, I think we're in the high. I think we're in the what's first is it, I always mix up awakening and high. Which of the eras are? Hang on.
I don't know, but I'm getting made fun of. Hooked on Phonics CannCon.
Is it because of the archipelagos?
The sad thing is I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm a nuke mag. Probably understood none of those words. I'm just kidding. Yeah,
where it tells
I make fun of myself for that. I read a lot, but I don't say the words out loud. So I read them the way that I read them in my mind. So yeah, I'm going to make up my own pronunciations. Just
So awakening high. Oh no. Oh yeah. Awakening. Is it awakening high unraveling crisis or high awakening unraveling crisis? I don't remember which one's first, and I'm having a hard time finding here. Wait, maybe it's this chart.
It was awakening was first. I remember that. Awakening
is before high. Awakening doesn't go into unraveling.
High is in the middle. High is the one step before the unraveling. So it's awakening, high, unraveling. Or is it awakening, high, unraveling?
Yeah.
I should have written this down.
I do this every time. Every single week I get them mixed up.
Let's make a what do you call it? Like please excuse my dear Aunt Sally for what do they call it? An acronym?
Oh, we should.
Let's make an acronym.
Overture.
I could just look it up on Perplexity. It'll tell me.
First quarter, second quarter.
What is the order of Strauss and Howe's turnings? I'm going to get it before you.
Probably, but you're
the high, the awakening, the unraveling, the crisis.
So high is first. So the fourth turning is the crisis era, right?
The fourth turning is the crisis, yes.
So high, awakening, unraveling, crisis, and then awakening, and then high again. So when this was written, they were in the unraveling, which means that what came after was the crisis era, and the crisis era was launched by an event. I think that's 9/11.
Okay. I could go with that. And then 20 years after that, I think it was, so that would have brought in a high. So you think from 2000 to 2020 was a high?
Yeah, but it's not, that doesn't mean that it was like a booming. No, I think it was a crisis. We're going into the high is what I think.
Well, I mean, it's the sample definition is the phase comes after a crisis and is marked by strong institutions, social cohesion, and collective optimism. And that's fair if it wasn't for the '08 boom, the crash. I mean, strong institutions. I mean, our government definitely made
That
institutions
wasn't a high.
strong.
It was a crisis.
No, that would have been the end of the crisis.
No, the end of the crisis comes after the unraveling, and the unraveling, the end of it was not in sight yet at the end of this book in 1997.
So
They
that's
were waiting from the transition from the awakening and from the unraveling into the crisis era, meaning the crisis era would have been a 20 to 25 year period kicked off sometime around 2000.
That was the argument that I was making, is that
It's fucking 9/11.
No, yes. Okay. We're in a high now.
Potentially, we could still be in the end of a crisis era.
The very tail end. I think the COVID and the 2020 election.
It would be the end, certainly. It would be the tail end or the end, or it just ended and we're in the high. I think, COVID might have been a turning point. Charlie Kirk's assassination might be a turning point. All the assassinations, this kind of season of political assassination might be a turning point.
So
but
the crisis is a decisive era marked by upheaval, major events, and reconstruction of the social order. This turning ends with renewed institutions and a rebuilt society. Yeah, I think I think that
what you asked me was if 9/11 and everything that happened over the past 20 years was a high. And I said, no, I think it's the crisis. Meaning we would be going into the high, which makes a ton of sense because you need to be in a high era to pull off a golden age.
But I'm saying we're in a high now.
Yeah, but I don't think you can know that. I think you can speculate that, but I don't think we can know where we are while we're right in that point of turn.
So it goes high, awakening, unraveling, crisis. So help, Ashe, something, CannCon. Help, Ashe, and then we need a word that starts with U. Understand, CannCon. There you go.
That is incredible.
And that's making fun of. That's making fun.
We're keeping it only because I won't forget it.
Help Ashe.
Help Ashe understand CannCon. Can you, for just $1 a day, you can help me understand archipelagos and anonymity?
Well, you still say Nevada wrong, so there's that. All right, folks.
Nevada.
Not exactly. So we're gonna wrap up here because I am freaking starving and Christy's cooking and I can smell it. And
I can smell. Matt's making lasagna. I can smell it too.
Christy's making something like chicken with I don't know, maybe chicken. She might be making chicken soup.
It was like such an official smell. It was such an official, could be soup, could be roast chicken.
I don't know. But thank you guys. I only
know it's lasagna because when it smells like lasagna, but also I saw him making it before I came up here.
We did have a $100 rant from Flying Storm for why we vote. Thank you so much.
It's not for this show.
I know. I'm so mad I missed why we vote. That both of us did. We pre-recorded it before the Dominion sale, and so
I didn't miss it. I was in the chat.
No, you missed it. It wasn't you talking. It was a recorded version.
It was both of us talking, and I was also live talking to people in the chat.
Do we know if it was real? What if it's day-to-day simulation theory?
Doing things in San Francisco that may or may not be gay. It's classified.
It was definitely not gay. It definitely was not gay. But it was fun, man. San Francisco's a beautiful place. Cool.
First time I went to San Francisco was Chinese. It was another boarding school spring break trip, and it was my boyfriend that I went with that time. It was Chinese New Year. It might have been before Christmas vacation or fall break or something. I don't know when Chinese New Year was, but it was Chinese. That was quite the eye opener. I grew up in Atlanta, and Atlanta's a rough town. San Francisco is something else entirely. Different kind of rough.
The only part,
rough.
The only part that was kind of crazy was like seeing all like and they call themselves this, the Chicanos, driving their lowriders like up and down the street in the middle of the night, like blasting music. And when I say lowriders, man, like these guys were driving like Chevelles and Impalas and like badass old classic cars that they actually did pretty tasteful. It's not like you would see in the movies and stuff. They were actually really tasteful looking cars. San Fran sucks ass.
You just send that to Alpha.
San Fran 69ers. No, we dogged him on Y Chromes yesterday pretty hard. So, all right, guys.
You were talking about the San Francisco stadium being crap. I haven't ever seen the football stadium, but the baseball stadium that's on the water is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I was giving him a hard time. It's not that bad. It is very close to the bay, like a part of the bay that the tide absolutely stinks, but we didn't really smell it until we got closer, which was only like half a mile. But it did smell pretty bad. So ZBM last minute said, love the end of the show. Totally late, but we'll watch the rerun. Going to be making rabbit pot pie tomorrow night. Tastes better than chicken. Thanks for a great show, guys. Yeah, I heard rabbit is like a little bit fattier. So it's like a little more like moist than chicken.
I have so many rabbits in my yard, and I've built such a strong, trusting relationship with them that they don't even really like flinch when I walk near them now. Definitely use that to my advantage.
So you start disappearing.
Hey, ZBM, send me your recipe just in case of apocalypse. Thanks.
Yeah, there you go. All right. That's going to wrap it up. Stay tuned for, we'll talk about soft disclosure.
Yeah, soft disclosure. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to the Willow Wind Farm this weekend, and I get to see the Burning Bright and John alpacas. I get to meet them, and I'm going to do farm tours and all sorts of fun stuff. See how the products are made. I will get lots of video, and it will be great. But everybody should check out these. Yeah.
Cocoa Beach, Gart, get your tickets. Virtue tickets are on sale. There's a big sale going until Wednesday, tomorrow. So
single day tickets for Gart are also on sale if you want to come in person. And we have our second Gart exclusive live stream this Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So get your virtual or in-person ticket and join us. Hang out with us on Thursday.
All right. We'll see you guys later. Take care.
Bye.
They say confidence starts with a smooth skin. And baby, soft disclosure lotion delivers.
I swear by this stuff. Like, I kid you guys not. This is the first lotion I've ever had in my entire life that, like, I don't get ashy after I put it on any part of my body. Like, my hands are always dry, and my hands have not gotten ashy without, like, rinsing them through water and washing them with soap since I started putting soft disclosure on. Like, it is black man approved. I kid you not.
Black man approved. You heard him. And let's be real. If it can handle his hands, it can handle anything.
Feet are like, they get so dry, like the heels of them, it'll just kind of like flake off. Like, but with soft disclosure, once you put it on, like it starts to absorb it.
Yeah, he went there. Don't worry, we won't show you his feet, but trust us, they're smoother too. Soft disclosure lotion is made with aloe, goat's milk, honey, and our exclusive oil blend that actually restores your skin barrier. Visit softdisclosure.com. Use code BADLANDS and get 15% off.